Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Raspanti today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show, the number one ranked podcast on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor. We got another great show planned for you today. In about 30 minutes, my partner John J. Raspanti is going to be interviewing Mike Kunda, a guy who grew up outside Philadelphia and became enamored with Sylvester Stallone's Rocky character after seeing the movie as a kid. And as he grew older, he started to realize he looked a lot like him. His fascination basically developed into a bit of a lifestyle, in which Kunda began to dress like Rocky and walk like him and develop his mannerisms, and he won a look-alike contest and went and found locations in Philadelphia that were used in the movie, and then he launched a Rocky tour that Stallone endorsed, and it's become one of the most popular tourist activities in Pennsylvania. So there's a whole bunch more to this guy's very interesting story, and you're going to hear John get to the bottom of it with Mike Kunda in just a little while. Before that, we're going to hear Paul McLaughlin's weekly report from the United Kingdom about the boxing scene on that side of the Atlantic, and we are going to lead it off, as always, by talking about the week in boxing with our expert analyst. Travis Hartman's a professional boxer and boxing trainer from Osborne, Missouri. He's now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Just got back from Paris, France. Rizwan Zahid is a boxing journalist from Toronto, where he's looking forward to a 24-hour shift at his work. And John J. Raspanti is chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. And John and I are co-authors of an Amazon bestseller called Intimate Warfare, The True Story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward Boxing Trilogy. Guys, Oscar De La Hoya says Golden Boy Promotions is moving on, and they're looking for another opponent for Canelo, basically claiming that Golovkin's afraid of Canelo and just not interested in that fight. Golovkin's promoter, Tom Loeffler, says Golovkin just wants a fair split of the money. So I guess the first question I'm going to toss out to you guys is whether Canelo has the right to lowball Golovkin. Sounds like Canelo and his people want a 65-35 split. And I'm not really convinced his star is any bigger than Golovkin's anymore, if it ever was. And if anybody lost that first fight, it was Canelo. Golovkin attracted a huge HBO audience fighting the guy who stepped in for Canelo, Vanes Martirosyan, who I think was more of a C-side than a B-side fighter, especially after a 2-year layoff. Nobody tuned in to watch Vanes Martirosyan, and they still had a huge audience. And the whole reason, Travis, that May 5 show fell apart was because Canelo tested dirty. Why do Canelo and De La Hoya think they deserve all that leverage? Do they deserve any leverage at all?
I mean, those are De La Hoya has always thought he deserved more than anybody. That's just been De La Hoya from his career till now. So that doesn't surprise me much as a promoter. I mean, the promoter always want more money. But to be honest, I think 65-35 is not completely fair. I actually do agree that I can see a 60-40 split. I do still think Canelo is the A side, which means the money side, not necessarily the A side, but the money side. I do still believe Canelo will pack in a stadium. I know Golovkin's popular. He's definitely been popular with us boxing experts because we've known Golovkin. We've followed him for a long time. He's just now resonating with the general public now. He has kind of crossed over a little bit. He's probably, I would say he's up there, the top 3, top 5 for sure, most popular fighters out there, business-wise as well. I still don't think he deserves a bigger split based on money, not based on talent, not based on who would win this next fight, just based on the money. I still believe because Canelo's got the huge Mexican backing. I mean, Canelo can still go to Texas Stadium and sell out 50,000 seats. I don't think Golovkin can do that. I think Golovkin is a solid 10 to 15,000 seat arena. He would fill a StubHub or even the theater at Madison Square Garden, somewhere like that, or even Barclays. I think Barclays is 15,000. I think Golovkin can sell that out for sure. But I think Canelo still brings in more money. And I think this is, to be honest, guys, I don't think Golovkin or Canelo has completely moved on. I think this is a negotiation ploy. I think this is Oscar De La Hoya negotiating again through the press, essentially. I think this fight might still happen, but I don't see them budging much on the 65-35. I think a 60-40 is 100% fair, maybe even a little more than 40. Maybe, if we start getting down to, the 1-2%, 43%, 44%, even a 45%, 55-45, I think is fair in Canelo's favor, just based on money and based on ratings, based on pay-per-view sales, based on all of that. I do think that Canelo does deserve that from the business standpoint, and that's where a lot of us get lost in this boxing game is it's a business. I mean, that's the sucky part. And me as a fighter, I can say it's the sucky part sometimes, but that's just the way it is. If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And I think that's where Golden Boy is kind of standing. And to be honest, Golden Boy knows that Golovkin's good. They know that if Canelo fights him again, Canelo has a massive chance of losing again. Not again, I guess it was a draw, but most people thought Golovkin won. But I think that this is just a negotiating ploy, guys. I really do. But again, I do think Canelo deserves the lion's share, and I think that if that fight does happen again, Canelo will get it. He will. He just if Golovkin wants to fight for that much money, he's going to have to fight Canelo. Golovkin is popular. Golovkin can fight anybody else and still make millions, but he's never going to make as much as he would make if he fought Canelo. There's a ton of great opportunities out there. I get it. There's a ton of other upcoming fighters. There's a ton of other champions that would make great fights and that I would definitely want to see, but the fact is, Golovkin is not going to make that kind of money fighting anybody else in that division right now. And I think that's a fact. I don't think he's going to make the kind of money he would make if he fought Canelo. And in turn, it's probably pretty close to that for Canelo as well. Canelo's super popular. Canelo's going to make a ton of money no matter who he fights just because he does have a huge following. But I don't think Golovkin is ever going to make the kind of money he would fight unless he fights Canelo again.
Riz, I want to get your take on all of that, and also De La Hoya is now making noise that he's pursuing Daniel Jacobs, Jamal Charlo, B.J. Sanders, or Spike O'Sullivan as an opponent for Canelo, and that kind of brought the cynic out of Rizwan Zahid earlier this week. Riz, you seem pretty convinced that Jacobs, Charlo, and Saunders are smoke screens, and that Oscar isn't really looking an inch past Spike O'Sullivan.
Well, I'll touch on the first topic. As much as Golovkin can't make any money compared to what he would make to fight Canelo, it's the same the other way around. And I think that's where Tom Loeffler's position is, because they know that Canelo is not. This is the worst PR crisis he's ever had in his career. When he fought Liam Smith on pay-per-view, it's not like that did tremendous numbers or anything like that either. So if he's going to fight Spike O'Sullivan, that could be on pay-per-view. And if you're looking at the list of those names, what doesn't belong? I mean, Spike O'Sullivan's is a hard-nosed, tough fighter. I saw him in December when he had a great knockout on the undercard of Lemieux and Billy Joe Saunders. But he's a right in front of you kind of guy, and any guy with a lot of skill, even though it'll be a hard fight, any fighter should have a comfortable win against him. Where Saunders and Jacobs and Charlos, those are three very, very different opponents. I think we're talking the A, the A+A level to the A- guy in Spike O'Sullivan. I think that's the draw. So when I just see his name tossed in there, and I believe he's co-promoted by Golden Boy as well, when I just see his name kind of tossed in there, it tells me that they're already preparing for that, because he's the only one. I believe. I don't think they're going to make a fight with Eddie Hearn necessarily, or Frank Warren. It was Billy Joe Saunders. Danny Danny Jacobs and Charlos. Obviously, there's a network issue there too. So it just what fits well. What is more likely to happen? Spike O'Sullivan was on HBO in December. There's no reason that he wouldn't be on HBO again. So all those little things. It's funny how they just kind of tossed his name in there and they're like, well, the other guys weren't available or whatever else. But I think Golovkin at this point, I think he's just calling out his bluff, because Golovkin has fought Danny Jacobs and he won, and it was a close fight. But that's already way better than any other middleweight win that Canelo has. And I think it's funny in some ways. I think Golovkin is better tailor-made for Canelo than a lot of the other opponents at that division. I think Billy Joe Saunders is a hard fight for Canelo. I think Charlo, because how much weight he puts on as well, Canelo might not be the bigger guy in the ring. Same goes with Danny Jacobs. And Danny Jacobs, I mean, if Golovkin was able to drop Danny Jacobs, and he hurt him a couple times, but that was a hard fight for Golovkin. And I think a guy who's very flat-footed and is not really good at cutting off the ring, like Canelo, I think people look at Canelo as almost a lesser version Golovkin in some ways. So I think they're calling their bluff. And to be honest, I hope they do, because I don't think it's a guarantee that Canelo beats Saunders. I don't think it's a guarantee that he beats Jacobs or Charlo. I think he beats Spike Sullivan, and I think that's why they'll end up going with that fight.
What about 65-35, Riz?
Oh, that's insane. I think that's so drastic, especially with all the nonsense. I mean, after the first fight, Canelo needs this fight more than Golovkin at this point. Because Golovkin, I think, if you're looking at that fight, people who argue Golovkin won that fight. People know Adelaide Bird's scorecard. People are familiar with the story of that fight, even what it says on paper. Most people are not going to see it that way. Where Canelo needs this fight more to repair his reputation, and not just from the first fight, but the tainted beef and everything that comes with it. So I think it's shocking that they're saying 65-35. This is not, it's not Joshua Wilder where you have two elite guys and they're just kind of battling for position, and one guy's saying, well, I make this much money in England, so he should come up. That's not what's happening here. I think this is in some ways, to be honest, insulting. I mean, I think that if you're showing that you're serious to make a fight, especially after, let's remember the first fight or the second fight didn't happen because of Canelo, and that's all it comes down to. So if I'm Golovkin, 1,000%, I want more concessions after, you delayed my career for another year. You did that for the 2 years before that. I mean, we were talking about Canelo and Golovkin when Golovkin was like 33. He's like 37 now. He's over to the other side of the 30s, and things can drop very quickly. So there's no guarantee that he wins a rematch either, just because of age. And Father Time, as we know, is undefeated. So I think that offer is ridiculous. I think a 50-50 is fair. I think that's a bargaining chip, as Travis was saying. So even if they settle on 55-40 or 55-45, that's fine. But I don't know. It doesn't seem. I don't like De La Hoya's response to say that Golovkin's scared. This is your fighter who tested positive for a PED. I don't care whether it was tainted beef or not. You were tested positive. And I think there's got to be a certain. Fair shake or a certain respect level that needs to be there to say that, okay, you know what, our side screwed up. We should give a little more concession. But the fact that they're not tells me where their priorities lie, and they're trying to wait for Golovkin to get even older. From last September to this past May, and now they're trying to get him to get even older from September, because we know Canelo's not going to fight till next May again. Canelo's the one who wants the time off in between fights. Golovkin doesn't. And then I think how much older Golovkin's going to be come next May, and I think that's when Canelo's going to want to take the fight, and then maybe he'll concede some money there.
Okay, and John, feel free to give your take on any of the above, but meanwhile the plot thickens because Golovkin risks being stripped of his middleweight title if he doesn't fight the IBF's mandatory challenger, Sergey Derevyanchenko, who's 12-0 with 10 KOs, not much of a pro resume, hasn't faced any top-level opposition. His big-name opponent is Turiano Johnson, who took him into the 12th round. His most recent opponent was Deshaun Johnson, who was 22-3. This looks to me like a shakedown by the IBF. They want a piece of Golovkin. Any audience for that fight, Golovkin-Derevyanchenko, is going to be fans Golovkin attracts. So for Golovkin, to me, this is a really high-risk, minimal reward for him. And Golovkin's getting hosed, as far as I'm concerned, and it's absolutely none of his own doing because this May 5th debacle was all caused by Canelo. So, anything you want to grab from what we talked about before or that?
Yeah, if the IBF strips him, again, you have to wonder about the intelligence of some of these organizations. The only reason people even know the IBF, a lot of people, is because of Golovkin. The IBF is a much lesser title than the WBA, the WBC, the ring title, whatever one you want to talk about. They do that, they get what they deserve then. Golovkin wants to be the champion of all divisions, and more kudos to him for that. And I agree. I think, to me, I'm going to just be blunt here, De La Hoya, some of his comments are ridiculous and embarrassing. I mean, I know he's doing a negotiating thing, but I just remember so many years ago when I interviewed him, and he pretty much said that he wasn't going to play the games as a promoter. He was going to not do like the other promoters. And he's doing just like them, and in a lot of ways he's worse, because saying that Golovkin is scared, like Riz, I was offended by that. He knows that's not true.
Right, yeah.
And that's a silly remark. Maybe that's a revenge thing after some of the things Abel Sanchez said about Canelo. But we know that what Abel was saying about Canelo was pretty legitimate. saying that Golovkin is scared of Canelo is not legitimate. It's just plain stupid. So I just rolled my eyes and I thought, come on, Oscar. You know, you guys, your fighter is the one that messed everything up. You could show a little humility here. You don't have to say you're sorry or anything because nobody does that anymore. But you could be a little bit more classy, I guess is the term that I'm thinking of. And I agree with what Riz and Travis said. I think a 55-45 split is fair, and I think Golovkin takes that. I do. And if I was him, I would, because Travis is right. Canelo still can put more butts in the seats, more masses. But Golovkin's pretty popular on his own. And that's just lowball. You know, Oscar's saying 65-35. That's the starting point as far as I'm concerned. And then Loeffler's saying 50-50. That's his starting point. So what do? You meet in the middle. You know, when they say 40, you say not 42. And they say 42, nah, how about 45? And you agree. Stop the game. But this is how it always is. This has gone back. You know, you read about boxing history. It's funny because, 80 years ago they were doing the same kind of thing. So this is the way it's done. Hopefully they get it done. I still want to see them fight, but there's a part of me, like we've been talking about for weeks, it's like, fine. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I wish that the shenanigans from Golden Boy and Oscar De La Hoya would just cease and they'd get a deal set.
Travis, Jacobs, Jamal Charlo, B.J. Saunders. Any of those three might beat Canelo, right?
I think B.J. Saunders could beat Canelo or Golovkin, to be honest. After his last fight, I was impressed with B.J. Saunders. I thought that guy is the slickest lefty fighter out there. He's got fast hands. He's got a little pop on his punches. He's got good footwork. I think that he could beat either one of the guys, to be 100% honest. And right now, that middleweight division, I think, is so stacked and so pretty even that I think that even Daniel Jacobs could beat Canelo. Daniel Jacobs gave Golovkin one hell of a fight. That was a hell of a fight. And Daniel Jacobs is big. He's a big guy. So he's definitely going to have the size advantage on Canelo if they fight. And then you have Charlo's that kind of, not a dark horse because we know who he is, but he's kind of a dark horse to the general public and they don't know about him, but he is a force to reckon with as well. He's a massive 160. Yeah, the guy's a monster. So I mean, this is an amazing time for boxing. I said it, I don't know how many times I said it, but I think this is a golden era of boxing. There's so many massive matchups in like the 154-pound division, the 160-pound division, now the heavyweight division. I think there's intriguing matchups in so many divisions right now that aren't just competitive. There's going to be fights that we don't know who the winner is going to be going in, and I love that. And I think that's what brings boxing fans to boxing. And I have to give some kudos to the promoters out there. I give them a lot of grief as a fighter myself. I give them a lot of grief because for the most part, a lot of promoters over the years were putting, tomato cans in with their A-side fighters and just getting quick wins on TV. And now you're not seeing that. You're seeing the young guys risking their undefeated records now to fight these top-level guys. I love that. And whether this negotiation with Golovkin and Canelo is going on, like John said, that's the history of boxing. That's how they've been negotiating since boxing. I can even remember they've been negotiating like that. So it doesn't surprise me. I mean, the things that Oscar says doesn't surprise me. I mean, Oscar is being a promoter, and he's being a crummy one sometimes at that, but he's doing what's best for his fighter, and he's trying to get more money. And same thing with Loeffler. Loeffler just wants more money for Golovkin. That's a damn good promoter right there. I want both of those promoters, even De La Hoya or even Loeffler. I want them on my side too. I want my promoter to get me as much money as humanly possible. And that's what both of these promoters are trying to do. They're doing it in a scummy kind of way, and lowballing, just doing some classless things. I agree with that. But at the end of the day, they're promoters and they're trying to get the most money for their fighters. So I kind of respect that because you do on the flip side, look at the MMA. You got Dana White who takes the lion's share of everything that goes on in the MMA. Literally everything that goes on in the UFC, Dana White takes the lion's share. Those fighters, they don't have a chance. So for that respect, I love boxing because of that. These promoters are going to bat for their fighters to get them the most money they possibly can, and I respect it.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor. We're talking to our expert analyst, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Raspanti. Let's switch gears, Riz, and talk about the monster, because I know you're probably wiping your chin waiting for this. Naoya Inoue, who boxing fans really need to discover if they don't already know about him. He's 25 years old, from Japan, 16-0, 14 knockouts. Most of those KOs have come pretty early. On Friday, he moved up in weight class and absolutely wiped out the WBA bantamweight champion, Jamie McDonald, in a minute 52 of the fight. This guy is vicious and ferocious, and his power definitely came up with him when he came from flyweight to super flyweight to bantamweight. Tell people about the monster.
He's a unique talent. I mean, it's I think it's a big disservice that he's not on USA TV in prime time for all his fights. He did, excuse me, if you remember, excuse me again, the crazy knockout streak Golovkin had a few years ago. I can't remember a first round knockout in there, and that's what makes he's freakish. Jamie McDonald was a guy who's never been stopped. His 2 losses were, I think, both split decisions, so he very well could have been undefeated. He hydrated. I say he probably put on 15 pounds. He was moving up in weight. There's just so many things that all the predictions I read, because everyone knows his freakish power, said, well, I think he'll struggle, at the beginning, and he might get outboxed for a few rounds, and then he'll close the distance. That's not what happened. He just walked through it, and you're watching the fight. This is a physically much smaller guy. He's something special, and now that he's going to enter the World Boxing Super Series, I think it looks like there's 4 titleists that are going to be in there. Is unreal, and you got to say that he is the heavy favorite for that. It's a shame that we couldn't see some of the fights at the lighter division. It just seems like he was growing too quickly and he was too big. It would have been nice to see him against guys like Sorungasai and Chocolatito Gonzalez, but man, he's something special, and I think it's ESPN Plus was smart to broadcast it on their network. But I mean, let's face it, most people are not watching a boxing card at 7 a.m., especially on a Friday or whatever it is. So I think it's a disservice that he's not. He could be the next crossover guy, and it's surprising that HBO is not willing, or Showtime, whoever's not willing to kind of put the bucks there to make him come to the States, because the one fight he did have on HBO, he wowed people. So I think it's a mistake not to have him continuously do that. Who knows where the World Boxing Super Series is going to be and what channel it's going to be on and all that, because American television definitely dropped the ball with the cruiserweight division and the tournament that's been currently going on. So it'll be interesting to see what they do for this division. But you got to say he's an overwhelming favorite, because it's rare for guys at that division to have power that's not an accumulation. A lot of these fighters, even if you remember, like Morales might have been the exception, Morales and Pereira. But other than that, a lot of these guys like Chocolatito Gonzalez, he just breaks guys down, and it's a volume of punches. Renault, he kind of has that one-shot power. And again, he was moving up in weight against a guy who's already big for his division and was coming in an extra 50 pounds heavier, and he blew him out in the first round. You cannot get more impressive than that.
That Inoue fight was 7 a.m. Eastern time. John, it was 4 a.m. Pacific time. You were going to get up and watch that. I don't know whether you did or not, but
of course I did, Dennis. You know I did. I was up. I got up. I watched it. It was the lead on Max Boxing. I had to see the monster in action, and he's scary. I mean, I loved it. I thought, man, this guy Riz is right. That guy is special. I mean, he hit McDonald with a left hook on top of the head, and McDonald wobbled. And again, Riz was right, because McDonald was so much bigger in there, but it doesn't matter. This little man, he's packing some power in those punches, and I have to say too that here we go again with HBO and Showtime, but mostly HBO. HBO's been falling behind Showtime in content and things, and here is the greatest opportunity for them to sign a fighter that is exciting. Doesn't matter if he's a small guy. Look what they did with Gonzalez, with Chocolatito. I mean, he built up a big fan base.
Yeah.
He became very popular. What are they doing sitting on their hands? Why don't they sign him? Now, maybe since he was on ESPN Plus, Bob Arum has already got some kind of tentative deal with him. Wouldn't surprise me. Arum's a very shrewd guy. But if Arum doesn't have any contract with him or anything, come on, HBO. I mean, you guys, who you got? You got Canelo and you got Danny Jacobs and maybe a few people. But this guy, I'm telling you, the American audience, when they see him more, they've only seen him once where he fought here, right? They're going to fall in love with this guy, because he's the kind of guy that boxing fans like. He was like he knocked out McDonald like Golovkin was, not in the first round. Golovkin didn't in the first round, but those hooks he was throwing, were wide hooks, and they were thudding. You could hear them. And this is a guy who weighs 118 pounds or whatever, and it was wildly impressive. And he did it like a cold-blooded assassin, which was really cool. And McDonald, you could see he was weeping in his corner after the fight. I think he was like that old cartoon, did you get the license plate of that truck? I think he was just really surprised that guy who's got the little choir boy face could just knock him into another zone. So, I did not regret getting up that early, Dennis, because I like watching him fight. It's like the third time I've seen him, and I hope that he gets his due, because most people don't know him, and his name, The Monster, is great. So if anybody knows how to sell somebody, HBO, Showtime, you hear me? Do it. What are you waiting for? God, if I was working at HBO, I would be begging them, going, look, I know we don't have a hell of a budget, but we got to figure out a way to get this guy on our broadcast, because he's the real deal, and people need to see him, because he's moving up, as far as I'm concerned, as one of the better fighters in the world. I mean, he's going to crack the top 10 here pretty soon. If he's not already done it. He's that good.
Well, yeah, and what I can't believe HBO hasn't scooped up the whole World Boxing Super Series. This bantamweight tournament right now, guys, it's got Ryan Burnett, who's a stud. He's a world champion. Zolani Tete, who's frightening, like Inouye. He's a world champion. Emmanuel Rodriguez is a world champion. They all hold 118-pound belts, and now there's Inouye. They're all in the same tournament. That's amazing. The WBSS has essentially put together a unification tournament of all the world champions. Travis, that's unheard of.
Yeah. I think where HBO missed the boat was not picking up the tournament, because, to be honest, that division, the reason why I think they probably didn't go after the Monster Inouye is because the division is not a deep division. It's not a division that he's amazing and he's a monster, but it's going to be hard to sell that against other people over time, over a long period of time, because he's probably going to clean that division out in a year. I mean, the guy's that good, but he'll probably clean that division out and just keep moving up probably, but eventually it'll succeed. But I just don't think the division's deep enough, is why the Showtime or HBO didn't even try to sign him, I'm guessing. But they're missing the boat on the Super Series, because all of the amazing fights in the 118-pound division are going to happen right there. And then it's going to be over. But you're missing it big time right there, because I think those fights all will be competitive, huge fights. They're world champions. Like you just said, there's world champions that are in the Super Series. And that's almost what you have to do in those lighter divisions, because, like I said, they're not deep divisions. They're not massive divisions. There's not a ton of professional boxers, professional grown men that are 118 pounds. So that's why you almost have to have a Super Series tournament. But when you can get those guys to agree to that, it's a blockbuster fight for about a year or 2 years, though. It's a blockbuster tournament. Those will be exciting fights, and they're captivating. And if you want to rebuild your brand, and I think HBO, to be honest, it's crazy that we're saying this, I think they have to rebuild HBO boxing. They have to rebuild that brand, because if it's not Showtime, it's the Premier Boxing Champion Series, it's even ESPN. They're all making moves to create better boxing matches and better boxers and signing all these people. And what's HBO doing? It's like they're sitting on their hands and just watching. I don't understand it. I really don't, because HBO has money. So I don't know why they're not rebuilding their brand and picking up little tournaments like this. It would be amazing. They would be captivating. Everybody needs to see these guys. They really do, because this is a exciting tournament. When those little guys go, usually, I remember growing up, not growing up, I was professional in 2004, but I remember when I turned pro, on all the local shows that I would fight on, it was always the lighter weight guys that would steal the show. They were the most competitive and most exciting. So it's not like it's been a secret that the littler guys steal the show a lot of the time. It's known. So how did HBO not pounce on this, especially coming off of that Cruiserweight Super Series, was huge. That was competitive. That was captivating. That was legit. And they should have, I don't know what it is, guys. Somebody in HBO boxing needs to be better boxing enthusiasts, better boxing people in general. They're missing the boat on a lot of stuff right now, and it's showing, because HBO used to be 100% without a doubt the powerhouse of boxing, and they're not anymore. They're definitely not. They're they're slipping a lot. I don't even know where I would rank them, but I would just definitely say that Showtime, even ESPN, even the PBC Premier Boxing Champions are just putting on hellacious fights and have hellacious fighters, and they're making moves. And I don't see HBO making any moves. I don't.
Yeah, you know, at heavyweight, cruiserweight, light heavyweight, even super middleweight, you're going to see plotting fights at times. Probably more often than not. Little weights, man, it's like, remember in gym class the little 98-pound wrestler in your class? Man, that kid could move. He was the fastest runner in school, just frantic. And that's what you see when you get these two guys in the ring, two little 118-pounders, 112-pounders, 105-pounders. It's always electrifying. Okay, Riz, Eddie Hearn claims he's been approached by 12 to 20 superstar fighters who have shown interest in being a part of his new DAZN Perform boxing venture, which is an 8-year, $1 billion streaming deal. Two things happened this week. First, Adrian Broner, my favorite, rejected Hearn's 3-fight offer, which guaranteed him $2 million per fight. Broner called it a slave deal. And on Saturday, a rumor surfaced that Keith Thurman might be on the verge of signing a 3-fight deal with Hearn. You know, Hearn with I mean, Aram's 1 million years old, King's 1 million years old. There's going to be, I think Hearn sees a wide open frontier here, and he's jumping into the void, putting some big money into it. He's trying to change boxing. This is interesting to me, what Hearn's doing, and what Broner's doing. I have no idea, as usual.
I'm not going to get started on Broner. There's not enough hours in the day. Eddie Hearn he's. I'll say this about him: he's innovative. He's trying to find new ways to get fights to happen. He got Danny Jacobs, and I think he's approached things perfectly. He didn't sign 20, 30 fighters and expecting to do something with that. He signed Danny Jacobs. That was going to be his American kind of fighter to get into that market. Obviously, he has Anthony Joshua, and that kind of helps. But he understands how to he understands how to be different, and I think like the deal he struck with those guys is incredible. And I think those guys, Canadian Zed, they struck a deal, I believe, with Champions League Soccer, and which has taken money away from a lot of different TV networks. So clearly, those guys have something that's innovative, and it's an interesting partnership, and Eddie Hearn sees a potential investment in there. I mean, there's a lot of money there. But I mean, the nature of the world now is streaming, and with HBO falling so behind on everything, HBO they're kind of like old dinosaurs, right? They're the company that has the most money, and I think they've lived on arrogance for a really long time. That we're the best, and everyone's going to come to us regardless, and we don't have to be innovative, we don't have to be different. And I think that kind of caught up with them a couple years ago, and then that's when they had Golovkin and they had Chocolatito Gonzalez, and that was different. But I think that's kind of run out. Chocolatito Gonzalez looks like he's pretty much done. Golovkin might have 2 or 3 years left, and that's it. So I think this is the new way of the future. Interesting. Keith Thurman's interested. And I don't know how that would work with the whole Al Heyman setup, because Al Heyman has brought boxing back to basic cable, which is itself incredible, because if it's not going to be streamed online, at least if it's available to the public, a lot easier than specialty channels would, then more eyes are on you. And I think that's pretty much what it comes down to. What's going to bring in the biggest audience in the easiest way possible? Because people are not going to sign up for HBO anymore. People around the world have cut cable, and streaming is the new way for the future. So if things are not going to be on basic cable, then streaming is the way to go. I'll be interested to see what other fighters he has on that list of guys he wants, or guys who are going to sign with him. I mean, who cares about Adrian Broner? No, I don't think anyone's interested to ever see Adrian Broner fight again. Keith Thurman, though, that's interesting, especially a 3-fight deal. That means we could see some really big monumental fights on a completely new platform. And I'll say this, like I said, Eddie Hearn is innovative, and that's what shocked people about De La Hoya. He is very much an old. He's an old horse, even though he was supposed to be the young, different kind of promoter. He's not. Eddie Hearn, though, seems to be. It seems like that's what he is, and I think it's easier to leverage combination deals. I mean, you can do an HBO crossover fight that can still be streamed, and I think that's the leverage he's going to have, rather than Showtime making a deal with HBO, etc. So I'm interested to see what comes out of it, but there's definitely potential there, and Eddie Hearn's like I said, he knows what he's doing.
John, what else? Another thing Eddie Hearn did this week, he and Joshua basically put their foot down and absolutely said Wilder has to come to England for that fight. Joshua turned down $50 million to come to America and fight Wilder here. That to me is unbelievable. I guess maybe he can make that much money or more over in England, I guess. But it also feels to me like Joshua is a little bit scared of Wilder. He wants every friggin' advantage for this fight, and fighting in England would be, that advantage. But what's your take on that they just won't even hear about coming to the United States to fight Wilder?
Well, I don't think he's scared of him, Dennis. I think you're right, though, that he's trying to get every advantage. That's what you're supposed to do. If you can get an advantage, take it. I think he knows that Wilder hits hard and he's awkward and he knows all those things, but he'd rather he knows that he'd be very comfortable, obviously staying in the UK. He'd have his fans behind him, so the stress level would be high, but not as much. So again, though, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, but Eddie Hearn handles these things in a much classier way. This is a little negotiating ploy again. I mean, I don't know exactly where the fight's going to end up. But I do believe that the chances are very good that it will be in the UK. And if I'm Wilder, with everything he's been saying for the last number of months, I take it. I mean, I say, fine, I'll fight you in your own backyard. I'll fight, just do this. I'm tired of talking about it, because he's convinced he can knock Joshua out, so it shouldn't matter where it is. It shouldn't matter if it's the UK, Vegas, New York, doesn't make any difference. So I think they're still playing games a little bit, but I haven't been watching it too closely, to be honest, because it seems like, well, we were getting closer and closer to a deal, and then the next day you hear, no, we're not even close at all. So again, it's the games that promoters play in boxing. But I have to agree with what Riz said real quickly about Eddie Hearn. He is a very, very impressive guy. He's younger. I don't know how old he is, but he grew up learning from his father, Barry Hearn, who was very popular, a very successful promoter in the UK. And Eddie's a very smart guy. I mean, he's not only a shrewd guy, he's a smart guy. And he sees the way the world's going, and he sees where boxing's going. And he's the only one who seems to be, even though Aaron with the ESPN Plus and the apps and all that, he's 80-something years old. Oscar and whatever, that's a good point. The young guy, he's not doing anything. He's just standing. I don't think Oscar De La Hoya has the creativity of an Eddie Hearn to be able to think, outside of the box. Because Eddie's seeing things that a lot of people aren't. And I actually like him. I don't usually say that about promoters. I just like most promoters, but his fighters love him and they seem very loyal to him. And it can't just all be money. They seem to like him. And I think because they know that he's really doing a hell of a good job promoting their careers. So if I'm a fighter, I would sign up with Eddie Hearn. So if he's got those many fighters interested, like Keith Thurman, we know, Dennis, we interviewed Keith Thurman. We know how smart he is. Oh, yeah. He probably appreciates what Eddie Hearn's doing. So I won't be surprised at all. And I think it'd be a very good move on Keith Thurman's part to sign with Eddie Hearn.
Travis, you missed the last two shows. You get the final word today. What's your take on Eddie Hearn? You like him?
I do. I like any guy that takes care of his fighters and pays them well. Like I said, as a professional boxer myself, if my promoter is taking care of me and paying me handsomely, I'm happy. And for me to see another promoter out there treating boxers and paying them very well, I'm super happy. And I think that Riz and John are all right. Eddie Hearn is a trendsetter. He's changing the landscape of the game, and he's changing it in a good way, and he's changing in a classy way. He's getting top fighters. He's keeping them busy, and he's putting top fighters in top fights. He's not putting them in with tomato cans. He's putting on exciting fights, and that's why Anthony Joshua. I mean, granted, the most of it's coming from Anthony Joshua, but Eddie Hearn is there orchestrating it all as well. So Anthony Joshua is performing for him and putting on 90,000 people in an arena. So you have to love that, and you have to know that he's gelling with his fighters and with his, I guess you could almost call them employees. Eddie Hearn, he's obviously very charismatic. He's very inventive, and he's putting on great fights. And I think that the boxing world better look out, because it's Eddie Hearn might take it all completely over. And honestly, this is what we need, though. We need promoters in competition. This is going to hopefully get Oscar De La Hoya off of his butt. This is going to get other promoters to start doing other things and start trying to keep up with a guy like Eddie Hearn, because we love that competition. It breeds great fights, and it grows boxing. Competition between promoters and fighters will grow boxing. And for that reason alone, I love Eddie Hearn, because I think he's growing boxing. And all of us on this radio show, we love boxing. And when people are doing good things for boxing and they're doing things to grow boxing, I think that he's doing an amazing job. And I love boxing, like I always say on this show, and I'm even more in love with it today than probably I've ever been.
Guys, 5 years ago, people were saying boxing was dead, dying sport. Yeah. A guy just made $1 billion streaming deal for boxing, not MMA, not football, nothing, boxing. So there you go. There's your fix for this week, Ringside Nation. A lot of fantastic insight, as always, from Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Raspanti. John will be back in a few minutes to interview Rocky Balboa doppelganger Mike Kunda. Very unique guy. You don't want to miss this one. Travis and Riz, you guys have a great week, being the living legends you clearly are. All right?
Have a good day.
Okay. Our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, is coming up right after an exquisitely short break to tell us what's happening in the United Kingdom boxing scene. Don't touch that dial. We are going to be right back.
You're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show, the hottest, sweatiest show on West Coast Radio.
What are you doing?
Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the sweet science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Familton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com.
Hi there, it's Paul McLaughlin with your weekly roundup of everything going on in the UK boxing scene at the moment. Firstly, Josh Warrington says he is unlikely to face Carl Frampton next and would rather make his first world title defence in Leeds. The newly crowned IBF featherweight world champion has been linked with a showdown with Frampton, whose Belfast homecoming is confirmed for early August. Former holder Lee Selby was the expected opponent for Frampton, but with Warrington producing the performance of his career to win on points at Ellen Road last weekend, the Leeds United fan would rather fight at the First Direct Arena before taking on the Jackal later in the year. Well, we caught up with Josh Warrington straight after his fight with Lee Selby.
I've done it, Anna, you know, every level I've done it. English, British, Commonwealth, European, international. They said I wouldn't beat Lee Selby. They said I just wouldn't even go past 5 rounds. I've just outboxed the boxer. Listen, Lee's a tough guy. I know a few head clashes, but you know, that one on either side. I'm speechless, I really am. I always credited Lee's boxing ability. I never at once said, all right, we had a few verbals this week, a few personal things. Well, that's only because he took it personal. I never discredited boxing his ability. He always said how easy it worked. He always said he'd play with me with a job. I've made bouncing up and down like Noddy, but listen, like I say, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the strongest, I'm not the most intelligent boxing brain, but I've got it where it takes, and I always find a way to win, and I proved that tonight.
And a cracking night it was for him. Next up, Kell Brook will return to the ring in July to set up the big one next, with Jarrett Hurd now on his hit list. Fierce rival Amir Khan has said he wants to box again in September, but promoter Eddie Hearn has added Hurd to the list of possible opponents as Brook looks to become a 2-weight world champion. And finally, some sad news. Boxing trainer Brendan Ingle died on Friday at the age of 77. A former pro fighter himself, the Irishman went on to train 4 world champions, including Johnny Nelson and Nassim Hamed. He passed away peacefully at 7:40 a.m. at the Royal Hallamshire Hospital on Friday. Born in Dublin in 1940, Ingle moved to England when he was 18 and went on to box professionally. He was based in his gym, Ingle's Gym, Sheffield in Winkerbank, and it was the base for world champions such as Nassim Hamed, Junior Witter, Clinton Woods, and Johnny Nelson, who had some very kind words to say.
I have to tell you about this guy called Brendan Ingle. Now, to me, he was my light at the end of the tunnel. To me, when nobody else understood me, he was the one I could relate to. He's the one that could relate to me. He's the one that gave me hope. He's the one that made me feel as though, well, you know, Johnny, things don't just happen to you. It's everybody. It's not about how you fall down. It's about how you stand up. It's about how you sail in life. Everybody's born with the same chances, no matter how rich you are, how poor you are. It's about how you take advantage of it.
Our thoughts are with the family. Right, that's your lot from me this weekend, guys. Gloves up and protect yourselves at all times. Back to the studio.
Thank you, Paul McLaughlin. Great job as always, and happy birthday next week, buddy. John J. Raspanti returns after another very quick break with this week's featured guest, so do not go away. I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. You know, writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Raspanti and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com.
Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm John J. Raspanti, and today's featured guest is a guy who has taken an extreme interest and turned it into a career. Mike Kunda first saw the classic film Rocky starring Sylvester Stallone in 1979. The movie had a life-altering effect on the kid. He began dressing like the fictional Rocky and receiving beatings for his efforts. Undaunted, his interest in the Rocky films and Stallone grew. As a young adult, he tried various jobs, but his heart wasn't in it. He did pretty well in the corporate world, but he knew that that kind of life wasn't for him. In 2006, he was coaxed into entering a Rocky look-alike contest in Philadelphia. His ability to improvise as Rocky won him the crown. A few years later, he created the Yo Rocky Tour, where Kunda drives fans to various Rocky film locations in and around the Philadelphia area. The tour is one of the most popular in the state. Mike also wrote about his Rocky life in Cue the Rocky Music, which is available on Amazon.com. And he's in the process of completing a bio on former heavyweight contender Chuck Wepner. Yo, Mike, welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show. How you doing today?
Well, after that introduction, we're really setting ourselves up for failure. I don't know how I can do any better than that.
Well, I think you can. You've been doing fine with this. So let's get right to a question that I wonder about, and it's talked about in the documentary, but I still want to hear it from you. What was it about Rocky that has inspired you for most of your life?
So, okay, this really starts where I think things all start at the beginning. Literally, when I was about maybe 2 or 3 years old. Every night before bed, my mother would read a book to me called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. It was about this wayward seagull who wanted to be like everybody else. He wanted to fly with all the other seagulls, but they wouldn't let him because he was just a little odd. So by the story's end, he ends up flying higher and farther than any other seagull. So my mother would read this to me every night before bed, and it stuck. It had Rocky undertones to the story. So when I saw Rocky on television in '79, all those nights my mother read to me, well, that sort of took form in the Rocky. I recognized it in watching Rocky, only I didn't know that until about a year ago. I figured that out for myself. Believe it or not. That's really after going to a psychiatrist and figuring out why was Rocky so important to me. But for years, I would say the other reason, I was a very insecure kid. I was very slight of build when I was a kid, and on the schoolyard bullies would have their way with me. So Rocky kind of gave me some hope and security that I could hide behind until I figured it out for myself.
Interesting. Do you think being pushed around by those bullies, do you think that even made you more determined to be what you are in a sense? I mean, you're gonna do whatever you were gonna do is obviously the theme of your life eventually. So you think, did it make you more determined?
It did, and it didn't at the same time. I was never one of those people that was going to be a massive overachiever. I was never going to be someone who was going to reach huge heights in the business world. So I guess for me, the bigger fact of where I ended up is because I had no marketable skills to offer anywhere else. I had a set of DNA that allowed me to look slightly like Rocky, and my passion for the character and getting it out there to fans around the world. That really was the final thing. It was nothing I didn't. When I was a kid, I wanted to be Rocky. That's all I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
But as a teacher told me, it's a ridiculous idea because no job in the world exists where you can be Rocky.
Yeah, that's true. Did you ever think about throwing away the fedora and the Rocky look for good?
No, I never thought about throwing it away, but I did have to put it away. There comes a point in time where we tell ourselves, those dreams are better left in the back of the closet. And that's what I did for about 10 years. And then a series of events happened in my life, and I brought the fedora and the jacket back out, and I never put it away.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the film because I know obviously you love it. You've seen it 500 or 600 times. I think I read in that article you sent me.
Yeah.
Seen it,
yeah.
Seen it a few times myself, I will admit.
How many times have you seen it?
Not 500 or 600. We're probably 10 times, probably like that. But you know what I do, Mike, is I'll be flipping around here and I'll see it on and I'll watch it. I'll watch parts of it. So that leads perfectly into my next question here. Tell me obviously you love the movie, but what are your favorite scenes from Rocky?
My goodness. My first and foremost, the greatest scene in any movie ever made by man is the 14th round. When Rocky he's basically out of gas. Apollo puts the death blow down to Rocky. He goes down, laying in the corner. Mickey is down, stay down. Rocky could stay down. He could. He's proven that he's a great fighter and he belonged there with Apollo Creed. But Rocky had one goal, and that was to be standing at the end of the fight. That was his personal goal. So even though Mickey doesn't want to see him hurt anymore and he's laying there, Rocky says to himself, no, I got to get up. I promised myself and Adrian what I wanted to do is be standing at the end of the fight, and that's what he does. And when he weighs Apollo Creed in, my goodness, does Carl Weathers sell that scene when he shakes his head. He cannot believe this man who he just destroyed is asking for more. that is basically how I've lived my life, how I try. And I very rarely do I live it to that standard, but that is my golden bar that I try to live up to. That's probably my greatest scene ever of any movie.
It's a great scene. You know, I'll tell you, I like the scene where he tells Adrian that nobody's ever gone the distance with Creed. I mean, that scene always, first time I saw it, Mike, in 1976, when, you know, he's in his apartment and he's been wandering around all night, and he comes back and he says, you know, I've been walking around thinking, and they got his posters wrong. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, wasn't that a great scene also? And they almost didn't film it, from what I've read about, right? You read about they were running out of money, and Stallone said, no, this has to be in the movie. It's a really important scene, right?
So I just had this very conversation with Stallone last Thursday. I was fortunate enough to be on the set of Creed 2 at the Victor Cafe, and there was a break in filming, so I got up close and personal with Stallone for about a half hour.
I was going to ask you about that. Go ahead.
It's funny that you say that, because this very question came up. I asked him. I said, Sly, the very scene you just described, I said, there's a rumor going around that you got a little lit up on some very cheap liquor.
That was one of the
right
ones.
before.
Yep.
Yeah, and he goes, oh, absolutely. He remembered the exact type of liquor that it was. It was very, very cheap, and it was disgusting. And I wish I could remember what he said. I was trying to recall all of the things he was going over, but he said they were literally pulling the plug on the lights and everything else. They said, no, we don't need it. We've got everything we need. And just like you said, Stallone stuck to his guns, and he said, no, this is the heart of the movie.
Yes.
Without this movie, the ending, none of it means anything, because we see what Rocky's true ambition is. It's to go the distance. Winning would be nice, but not necessary to be considered personally validated. And I thought that was very beautiful.
Yeah, and I completely agree with him at that scene. I mean, we wouldn't have known it, but I just don't think Rocky would have been as good, or as great, I should say, without that scene. The other scene I like, Mike, I got to get your view on this, is the scene where Mickey comes up to see Rocky and he wants to manage him. And I just love, that's where I'm flipping around, Mike, and I'll stop, because I love to watch that scene, because Stallone just knocks it out of the park with that, you came up with my, does my house stink? You know, I mean, it's brilliant. And I also heard, and I don't know if you heard this, that they didn't get the first take because they ran out of film or something when they were doing it. I read that years ago, and so he had They didn't. Yeah, you heard that? Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't get the sound. It was there was something wrong with the batteries, and they couldn't get any sound from it, so they had to do it again. And Stallone says that it was one of the most incredible scenes he had ever done. And I had a very limited conversation with John Avildsen a few years ago before he passed away. And for those that are listening that don't know, John Avildsen, of course, was the great director of Rocky and The Karate Kid. So, and what he said is that scene actually brought a tear to his eye. It was such an emotional scene. And Stallone had to turn around and do it all over again, and he did it like a true professional. Which was quite amazing. Because imagine putting all that energy and emotion into the scene, only to be told that you got to do it again because someone didn't do their job and charge the battery or whatever it was. It was crazy.
Totally crazy. And then, at the end, I'm sure you noticed this too, when the music, that great music, when he runs out of the apartment, he's running after Mickey. And Burgess Meredith, who was obviously brilliant in that movie, when he sees this guy who 2 minutes before was yelling and so angry, did you notice that he kind of stumbles like, oh, is he going to hit me? Or did I just love those little bits that great actors can bring to their roles. And that's just an incredible moment in the movie.
Well, I got to tell you, again, the level of actors and actresses that were chosen for these roles, it was absolutely fate and destiny, I believe. I don't think anybody else could have done what these actors and actresses did in that original Rocky. And in that scene, I think Burgess Meredith played it so well because he really thinks Rocky might come down and rip his head off.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in a moment of clarity, Rocky simply says, "Oh my God, what am I doing? I'm fighting the greatest fighter in the world, and I'm going to get my block knocked off. I need Mickey." So of course he runs down, and we see what we see. But yeah, and they didn't really have an option to do a lot of takes. Most of those were 1 or 2 takes at a max. So they had to keep moving when they were filming the original Rocky.
Yeah, that's incredible. Man, do they deliver. Okay, I want to talk about the documentary that was made on you called The Pretender. And the documentary provides an overview and an insight into what you do. And I found it really interesting how you got into character. I acted in college.
Oh, yeah.
I remember I used to feel the character when my makeup was being applied. Is that the same for you when you start transitioning into Rocky, when you're putting on the stuff, the bruise on your eye and all that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. Because, that's something I don't have on my face daily. I don't take punches for real. I pretend to take punches for a living. So, I don't have a bruised face all that often. I may walk around with a bruised ego, but not a bruised face. And when you are putting the white strips of the medical tape on, and then you start applying the makeup little by little, and you just start imagining, what if I was a club fighter and I had to tend to my wounds nightly when I got home from, making $50 for getting my face kicked in. You go into that process, and although I really haven't done much acting, I kind of think that's how actors do. When they put on a little bit of makeup or the costume or the period clothes or whatever, like I always imagine Stallone, when he puts that headband on for Rambo and that knife is on his hip, there must be something so dramatic in his thinking to become Rambo. You know what I mean? Or when he puts that fedora on and he goes from talking normally to how you doing, and it's amazing to watch when it does happen. So yeah, you are correct.
Yeah, you also I really like watching you because you nail the Stallone mannerisms perfectly. How did you manage to do that? Did you do the old mirror trick? Did you just watch his films over and over? How did you do it? Because you got it.
Well, thanks. My big problem is I never really thought I looked like Rocky. I never thought I sounded like Rocky. But the one thing I thought I did better than other people who tried to imitate him was the mannerisms. There's a certain walk that Stallone has. There's a certain walk that Rocky has. And so when I first saw Rocky on television, eventually I was able to we got a VCR and we recorded it. So I would watch it over and over and over. I didn't go out. I didn't have a lot of friends. My best friend really was Rocky Balboa, and I was drawn to the way he was cast aside by everyone in the movie, from Gazza to Paulie to Apollo, even from Mickey at a point. And I felt I was very similar, square peg, round hole type of guy. So when Rocky would walk, I kept that in my mind. And then my grandfather gave me his old black hat and leather jacket when I was about 13, and I used to wear this around my neighborhood. And what I did, I took my Walkman, and I actually recorded the movie Rocky onto audio. So I would walk around the streets of Scranton, Pennsylvania, reenacting Rocky's shuffle, his thumbing of the nose, his constant sniffling, and little by little, you start to take it over. It's the same like for an Elvis impersonator who croons in front of the mirror and into a hairbrush, over and over and over. And with the tours and doing my Rocky gigs, I get to perfect it. So the end result, maybe I don't look exactly like Rocky, maybe I don't sound exactly like Rocky, but when I am talking and dressing like Rocky with the mannerisms, and you're in Philadelphia, well, it's hard not to sell it at that point.
Yeah, really. You're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm John J. Raspanti, and we were speaking with the City of Brotherly Love's favorite Rocky, Mike Kunda. Speaking of that, Mike, 12 years ago you were crowned the best Rocky at a lookalike contest in Philadelphia. Were you surprised that you won?
You, what does Clark Griswold say? I wouldn't be more surprised if I woke up with my head sewn to the carpet. Yes, I could not believe I won it. I didn't even enter the contest. Friends of mine from the Victor Cafe entered me. They took a picture that I had. I got invited to Stallone's 50th birthday party, and he and I took a picture together out front of the restaurant, and that picture got submitted. And I didn't enter it because I thought surely there would be someone, who looked more like Rocky, sounded more like Rocky. But if there was, they didn't enter either. So I get this very strange phone call a few weeks after I read about it in the paper, and they said, Mr. Kunda, you're in the top 5 in this Rocky lookalike contest. And I said, oh, no, you got the wrong guy. I never entered it. And they said, well, we're looking at a picture of you and Stallone together, and he looks like he could be your big brother. And I said, well, how did you get the picture? And they said, well, we're looking at the envelope it came in, and the return address said the Victor Cafe. So it was at that point I knew my friends had sent it in. And I said, well, if you're telling me that I'm in the top 5 and I've done absolutely nothing at this point, yes, I will show up on the day of the contest. So I did. I brought, my hat and my coat, and I gave it my best shot. And there was a bunch of guys there. They looked really, really good, and I did not expect to win. And when I did, it floored me because the contest itself was about an hour. And through that hour, I was drifting back in my mind how I got to sit where I was sitting alongside the stage before I went up to do my thing. And it's like your life flashes before your eyes in a weird way. And I had never done anything like that. I never spoke in front of 2,000 people at Love Park before. That's crazy. I never had aspirations of doing anything like that. So when I won, it really was like that moment where Adrian is fighting to get to the stage, because my wife was in the crowd and she was trying to get to the stage after I won. And I remember picking her up and bringing her on the stage. And I told her, I can't believe it. We did this. This is incredible.
Yeah, your wife's a beautiful lady. She's so sweet, in that documentary. I hope people get to see it because it's very touching. I have to ask you.
Definitely.
Yeah, I have to ask you about the Yo Rocky tour because I keep threatening to come out there and go on that with you because I love movie locations and I love to see it. But where did you get the idea for doing that? Taking fans or whatever to locations in Philadelphia where Rocky was shot.
So in 1989, I met my wife. Her name is Sue. So I met her in '89, and Rocky V had just got done filming, and we were watching. We were inspired. We went to see Rocky V, and then we watched a little bit on Rocky I on VCR. And I paused it one night, and I said, "Listen, let's drive down to Philly and try to find some of the neighborhood scenes where Rocky was filmed." And she said, "Well, we don't know where we're going. We're not really from Philadelphia." So I said, "Okay." Well, there was no internet at this point. There were no cell phones. And if you wanted to take a picture of a location on the television, you had to go to Kmart and get your film developed. It would take a week. So I had an old Polaroid camera. And what I did, I paused the VCR on all the neighborhood scenes. And I took about 30 snapshots with the Polaroid. And then we drove to Philly the next day with a stack. It looked like a stack of cards of Polaroids. And we literally held them up looking around. And the only thing I knew was the L train was in Kensington. Now, Kensington is in northeast Philadelphia. So that's the only place in Philly where the train is above ground. So I said, if I can get there, these photographs, these Polaroids might help me find the locations. So it did. After about 18 hours, we found a majority of the neighborhood locations. And on the way home, my wife says to me, she goes, somebody ought to do something. They ought to do like a Rocky tour. And, she winked at me, and then she slept the rest of the way home, and I started thinking. So I let that in my brain for a while. And then right around 2008, 2009, we did the first Rocky tour. Now that I had a platform via the Facebook, that's where it started. We did a Facebook site where we did a Rocky tour. We did it like 6 months in advance, and we had people sign up from around the world. And we did it on a big yellow school bus. And it was fun, but I learned what not to do, what worked, what didn't work. And my wife comes to me one day and she goes, I know you want to do this full time. I know you want to turn this into a business, but it's too expensive with the big bus. She said, maybe we could do something different. And at that point, we both started thinking, and I said, well, what about private tours? She goes, yeah, that's the way to do it. Do a private tour. So now we get like, a minivan. I have my tour logo on the side, the Yo Philly Rocky Film Tour, and we pick up clients at their hotels. We drive them around for 3 hours. It's about an 18-mile circumference. They filmed all over the city. So we hit an awful lot of sites in about 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And I'll tell you, if you take a look on TripAdvisor, we're at an excellent standing. We're just under 200 reviews, and they're all pretty much excellent. And the people that take the tours, like, I think I'm a big Rocky fan, and I am. But I get people from around the world, they tell me how the character of Rocky has given them either emotional support, it's some type of a creed that they go by, some type of Rocky philosophy that has helped them through the highs and lows in their life. And I get a window into people's lives. They allow me that, and it's one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had in my life.
Incredible. Do you have a favorite location when you go on these tours that every time you go there makes you smile?
Rocky's, the two places. Mighty Mick's Gym, which hopefully we're going to have some good news that someone has bought that and maybe turning it into a Rocky museum, we hope. And the other place is 1818 Tusculum Street. It's Rocky's house, that apartment, because for a few reasons. You know, Rocky was able to get out of there. He was able to make it out. But that's also where he fell in love with Adrian. Yes, he meets her at the pet shop, and that's where they have their little bit back and forth. But they genuinely connect and fall in love in Rocky's apartment. Now, I know they never filmed inside Rocky's apartment in Philadelphia. They filmed that at a bum's flophouse in downtown Los Angeles. But when you drive by, it looks exactly as it did in 1975 when they went to film it. Those two, they absolutely bring the biggest smiles to my face. And the third location, I would have to say, without a doubt, the Rocky Steps.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah, and I love that line when he's trying to get Adrian to come in there and go, look at this face. Put this face on a stamp. What do you think? You know, that's just such a great line by Sylvester Stallone. He's a heck of a writer. Okay, now
he really is. Yeah, he's one of the best.
He is. When Stallone announced that he was making another Rocky film in 2005, I know you remember this, and I you're pretty honest about things because you and I have spoke about concerns about Creed and whatever. But in 2005, when that was announced, the groan could be heard from coast to coast. They were mocking another sequel, blah, blah, blah. But the film, Rocky Balboa, surprised many by recapturing the grit and the soul of the first film. Obviously, the original Rocky is your favorite, as is mine. What's your second favorite, Mike?
Okay, top three. Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's Rocky 2 is.
You know what?
Yeah.
You're about 250% correct about Rocky Balboa. I remember earlier, a little closer to 2000, Stallone had come forward saying he was going to do Rocky 6, and Elton John was going to do all the music for it.
Yeah.
And I remember being very frustrated, saying, no, don't do Rocky 5, didn't do very well. Don't do another Rocky. So in 2005, when he announced he was going to do that, I was incredibly skeptical until I was able to get on site. The owners of the Victor Cafe, they snuck me inside during filming. And one night after filming, the place was shut down, but I was able to stay in there with the owners. And the script was on the table, so I read the entire script. And I looked at it and I said, oh, my God, this is going to be incredible. And then after watching them film, my God, I tell you what, I can't imagine. I don't want to live in a world that doesn't have Rocky Balboa, okay?
Yeah, that was incredible. You know, what about Creed? You know, there's another one that when it was announced, I kind of groaned. And then when I saw the trailer, Mike, I knew immediately that Ryan Coogler and his team were really onto something. I mean, I was basically blown away by the trailer. Now, it doesn't always guarantee that a movie's going to be good when you see the trailer, but it just had it, you know. Did Creed surprise you?
Well, yes and no. It surprised me during the process of making it is when I was very surprised. Again, my friends snuck me in at the restaurant, and I was on set for about 4 days, and I watched them deeply filming. And again, a version of the script was left on a table, and me and my wife and the two owners, Greg and Alexa DiStefano, we sat at a table and we read over the script as we split a bottle of wine. This was after filming. The film crew, it was a day shoot, so everybody was gone, and we just sat there amongst all the Rocky props, and we read the script. And I said, oh, my God. I did not believe in Creed. I did not want Creed. I didn't think it was needed. I still, in my heart, I still feel we didn't need a Creed movie, but it is here. And I will say Ryan Coogler is nothing short of genius when it comes to discussing him and what he did with the Rocky franchise to kind of modernize it and bring it into a new generation. I thought it was just a well-done movie. Now, did it do better because Rocky was in it? And if Rocky wasn't in it, would Creed have been as good? I don't think it would have. I think it needed that combination of Adonis Creed and Rocky Balboa. What do you think?
Oh, I completely agree. It brought that dynamic, you know, the old and the new, and he played on that theme perfectly. Remember when Adonis Creed is saying, "Oh, don't worry about that. Just I'll send it to you," and he says, "It's in the cloud." And he goes, "What do you mean it's in the?" Remember Rocky's like, "What do you mean it's in the cloud?" Remember he looks up into the sky. And
what cloud?
What cloud, right. It plays off the age thing. And I actually thought that was brilliant that he did that. And, you know, that's the thing about what else blew me away about that movie was Stallone. I thought that was an incredible performance. I got a special screening of it, Mike, where the PR crew brought me to the city, and I sat in there all by myself watching it, just me. And I was just blown away by Stallone. I mean, obviously everybody is really good in that movie, but I didn't know if he had that in him anymore. You know, I knew that in the 70s when he did Rocky that he's limited in an actor in a way, but when he's Rocky, he's brilliant. I mean, nobody else could even come close to that. Do you think that his performance in Creed was the best of his career?
I think it's in his top 3 or top 4. I always put Rocky. To me, Rocky is a flawless movie. It is a perfect movie to me. I don't think there's anything wrong. Stallone's performance in Rocky, the original, is, to me, the greatest performance I've ever seen. Because everyone thought after that, that Stallone was Rocky. He was a single-syllable guy who, you know, drug his knuckles on the ground. So I would put his performance of Creed, maybe right up there with Copland and Rocky.
Yeah, he's excellent. Yeah, Copland. I don't know how many people saw that, but yeah.
He actually got he had to have he got a acting coach, and he really went the extra mile. I don't know if he thought he had it in him. I think he really had to push himself because, you know, when you do those action movies, it's a different acting muscle you're using. So I don't know if he thought he could pull it off. But pull it off he did, and I tell you, he should have won the Oscar.
I know. I completely agree. You know, and he showed us in 2005 with Rocky Balboa. I mean, that was also an outstanding performance. And you're right. I mean, I think that was the thing too. You know, you hear TV actors say, look, you know, they get tired of playing the same role, and he had played Rocky so many times. That's what I mean. He brought a freshness to it that I didn't expect. I mean, that's what blew me away. I was like, wow, you know, he's played Rocky so many. He could play him in his sleep, literally. But he brought more to it, and obviously it was a script too. But he brought another dynamic. And that part where he says, you know, my life has passed me, basically. The parade has passed me by, and you know, I mean, I had tears in my eyes. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I thought, wow, this is just incredible. And you're right. I read that too. He brought in an acting coach, and I went, well, you know, that's very revealing about how he was feeling before he started Creed. He must have been having some doubts himself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that. And I think Stallone is exactly like all of us. He's no different than any one of us in the sense that he has his own insecurities. He has his own mountains that he wants to climb, and he has to challenge himself. And, you know, his wife, Jennifer, literally called him a coward because he turned down the role in Creed for 3 years. Coogler had gone to him and repeatedly begged him to do this role, and he said, no. He goes, I don't want Rocky to have cancer. Maybe a neighbor has cancer and Rocky helps him. And Jennifer Stallone, she said, my God, she goes, you're a coward. She goes, you're an actor. You're supposed to act. She goes, you need to be vulnerable and let the world see the character of Rocky vulnerable like that. And I'll tell you something. I know it's just a movie. I have still never seen the ending of – I saw the ending of Creed once. I've never watched Rocky walk up those stairs struggling with the cancer. I shut it off before then. And I tell you, it's very emotional to see the character there. But apparently, not so much of a spoiler alert because I think everybody knows, you know, Rocky's back for this Creed 2, and he's looking pretty healthy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you now. What are your feelings about Creed 2? What do you think about that? I mean, he's bringing Drago back. It's like a greatest hits thing in a way. I mean, a little bit. The big showdown between Adonis, right, and Drago's son, I guess. What do you think? I mean, when I first heard it, you and me were on Facebook going, you and me were getting ripped by everybody because I think we were about the only two people going, I don't know. I don't think I like this. I mean, another one? You know, let it. It was such a great way to end Creed, and especially Stallone himself with the Oscar. He won everything except the Oscar. So it's just a great. So what do you think about that?
So I'm with you. You know, when it was announced, I was so bummed. I'm like, oh my God! And then I heard Coogler wasn't attached, and I was like, oh Jesus, what are you gonna do? No, what a mistake this is gonna be. And then. Last Thursday, I spent about 14 hours on the set in the restaurant watching Drago and Rocky go at it. And let me tell you, I am more excited for Creed 2 because we're going to see the fall of Drago. What happened to him after the epic fight in 1985 with Rocky Balboa on Christmas Day? We're going to see Drago did not end up all that great. Life has not been good to him. And the scenes I watched filmed were so charged with emotion. I can't wait to see them play out. It's going to be wonderful. And I have a lot of friends who have been on the sets of the boxing matches and other sets around Philadelphia as extras. Some were speaking extras. Some were background that got to hear and see everything. And I've been putting the entire movie together. And I got to tell you, I am really excited about this. I have no negative thoughts at this point.
That's good. Okay, last question for you there, Mike. You mentioned it a little bit in that video of you just standing there on the sidewalk chatting with Sylvester Stallone. It kind of made me think of the documentary where you said you just wanted to sit on the couch and crack open a beer with Sly and just chat, right? Kind of reminded me of that. If you guys were drinking a beer, it would have been perfect. But how did that come about?
Did you ever see Forrest Gump?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how Forrest Gump falls, backwards into everything. It just happens organically. So the short version of this is we were in the restaurant, and we were a little worried about if we left the restaurant to go outside to get some air, it might be a little tricky getting back in because of security and whatever. And even though I was with the owners, they were worried. So Greg DiStefano goes out first. And we saw that Stallone had gone out to get some air. He grabbed his cigars and he went out to get some air. And so Greg calls his wife Alexa and says, "Come on, get out here now. There's nobody around, Sly. I just was talking to him for a little bit. Now's the perfect time." So we go out. Like, I really wasn't thrilled because I wanted to come back in and watch more filming, you know. So we go out, and Stallone is standing there just minding his own business. And about a month ago, Stallone had done something so generous and so gracious for me. He endorsed me and my Rocky tours via his Instagram account. And I didn't ask him to do that. He did that because he liked me, he liked what I do, he liked what he read about me in the tours, and he wanted to kind of help me out. So I wanted to thank him for that. So I simply went over to him and I said, "Hey, Sly, Mike Kunda from the Rocky Tours," and he remembered me instantly. And he goes, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "I just want to thank you so much for what you did for me on Instagram." And he was like, "Oh my God, are you kidding? You know, you're helping keep Rocky alive. The fans get to see Rocky Land." He goes, "You know, what you're doing is fantastic." So I was going to leave him alone at that, and I started to back away, and then he started talking to me about the neighborhood and how things have changed, and one question went into another, and so that was the first 15 minutes. About halfway through our time together, he tells his assistant, Sarah, he says, "Hey, take Mike's phone and videotape us or video record us so he could send it out on his social networking so it can help him get his tours out there and his Rocky gigs." So, again, I did not ask him to do that. He did that out of the kindness of his heart. So the video you saw, it's like 3.5 minutes, we did that, and he talked about something so amazing. He was asking me about Mighty Mick's Gym, and I told him my idea that I had for Mighty Mick's Gym, that I wanted to buy it and turn it into a museum/gift shop where I would remake the second floor to look like Mickey's Gym, whatever. So he loved my idea, and that started the wheels turning in his head. So then we talked for another 15 minutes after that. I got to ask him any and every question I ever wanted to ask that I could cram into that half hour. And he still was going to keep talking. But then someone from the set comes out and says, "Sly, the director needs you." And he does the most bizarre thing. We're literally in the middle of talking, and he turns and walks away from me. No goodbye, no I'll see you later, nothing. And I thought, okay, well, I might as well just yell thank you. And I say, "Hey, Sly, thank you so much." I said, "I appreciate your time." And he looked back over his head, and Sylvester Stallone was gone. There was no Stallone in his eyes. It was Rocky. And he just goes, "You're welcome, you know." And I thought, oh my God. He turned into Rocky because he has to go onto the set to do Rocky. And obviously, you saw him wearing Rocky's wardrobe for the scene where he... So the scene he goes into film, right when he gets done talking to me, is the scene where Drago's in the restaurant somewhat inebriated, and he confronts Rocky. And I'm thinking, when I go to watch that scene, I'm going to know 5 minutes before they filmed it, I was out front talking to Sly for a half hour. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, Mike. Wow.
So later in the night, you know, I got to see him again, and it was just amazing. It was just absolutely amazing.
God, that's incredible. I mean, there must be times where you just pinch yourself, right? I mean, that's just,
oh my God. I tell you, I really do, and I just can't get over it. It's so incredible. I'm telling you. I think about how lucky I am, and some people tell me, well, you know, you put a lot of hard work into it, but I say, yeah, but the cosmic tumblers of the universe were in my favor. I was very, very lucky.
Yeah, it's both, Mike, and that's what you need. And I'm really happy for you because I know I've known you for a while, and you're so dedicated, and it's phenomenal to watch and see grow, and it's great. And so that'll do it, Mike. thanks for being our featured guest on today's Ringside Boxing Show, and I want to say good luck to you with your next book and the tour, and people can get the Cue the Rocky music on Amazon.com, as I said, but I was going to say Yo Rocky, whoops, Yo Mike, good luck to you, and hope everything goes well.
Yo, John, thank you so much.
You bet. Take care, Mike.
Thanks. Yep.
That's going to do it for today's Ringside Boxing Show. Thanks, as always, to my fellow analysts, Travis Hartman and Rizwan Saheed, and our British correspondent, who always does an excellent job, Paul McLaughlin. And another huge thanks to today's featured guest, professional Rocky impersonator Mike Kunda. We also appreciate you big time, Ringside Nation, for making us the most listened to podcast on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Thanks for being a part of our worldwide audience again today. Keep your chin tucked, and we'll talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day for me to whoop somebody's